There was a shimmer on the bathroom carpet when I walked in, reflection of the sunlight that was just beginning to break through the blinds. It didn't blind me, it just caught my attention. I looked down to see what was there. Since I was barefoot, I didn't want to step on glass or anything. Caroline didn't mention that she dropped anything in the bathroom, but who knew? I didn't notice it at first because without the light, it was almost the same color as the carpet. But eventually I found it. A tiny circle of foil fell to the floor and reflected light into my eyes as I entered the bathroom. I picked it up. It was the pill strip backing, the little circle of foil that pops out when you squeeze the pill out of the strip. Most of the time it stays attached to the strip, but sometimes, as in this case, it comes loose and falls to the floor. I examined her. It was blank on one side, but had markings on the other side. 2. Since it was Wednesday, I assumed that meant Tuesday, yesterday's pill. This meant that the pills had to be taken daily. I knew I was taking no medications, I was 35 years old, and I was as healthy as a cucumber, as was my wife, Caroline. We had both recently had our annual physicals and were found to be healthy and fit, so why was there a pill pad in my bathroom? I knew there were several pills to take daily, but one that came to mind was the birth control pill. Caroline hadn't been on the pill, or at least I thought she hadn't, since I had a vasectomy 2 years ago after the birth of our second and last child. She had no problems with cramps or period pain, and was one of those lucky women who had trouble-free periods. So why pills? I have to admit that my first thought was that she might have some illness that she didn't want to tell me about. For a few minutes, my thoughts went to very dark places, but I again remembered the physical examination and how we showed each other the reports. We were both clean. If the little circle of foil was here, then most likely the pills were here too. I closed and locked the door. Caroline was still in bed and began to search. It took me a while to find them, but eventually I found them. They were buried at the bottom of a box of tampons, in a box of aspirin. When I pulled out the strip of pills, I immediately recognized them as the ones she had been taking before I had the surgery, and even before that, between our children when we weren't trying. Why did she start taking the pills again? I had only one answer to this question. She had sex with someone who could get her pregnant. She cheated on me. Caroline and I were together for 9 years. I had just graduated from university and was studying to become an engineer, and she was working as an assistant. We met at a bar, and although we didn't hit it off right away, there was enough interest for her to accept my invitation to dinner. Caroline was tall, only a couple of inches shorter than my 5'10". She was a former athlete and retained an athletic build, a thin figure and small breasts. Her ass, by far my favorite part of her body, was simply amazing. We courted for about a year and then got married when I was 26. Our 2 children were 5 and 2 years old, and I had surgery to prevent any further accidents. 2 was our limit. We had the perfect set. James was born first and then Sonia. I had an impeccable family, or so I thought. Caroline returned to work, taking maternity leave for each of her children, not wanting to leave the job she loved. We had an au pair who came to look after the children during the day and went home in the evening. She cost almost as much as Caroline made, but Caroline didn't care. She just wanted to leave home and work at a job she loved. I worked with a couple of buddies, creating an engineering firm between us. We were never rich, but we all had a very good time. I cleaned up the bathroom, put her pills back, and decided I needed to think about it. There was no point in confronting her now. I needed a plan. I needed proof. What happens after this? I had no idea. First, you need to collect all the facts and then see where it leads. I went to work as usual and considered my options. First, I wanted to know who and when, and also for how long. Was it someone at work, God forbid, her boss? Is this the same person she was communicating with before we met? This brings me to my next terrible question. Were these children even mine? All this time, I didn't let my emotions get in the way. I knew this would happen, that I would feel loss, betrayal, pain, and anger. But first, I needed to figure out if it really happened. I was working on the problem, and didn't yet have enough facts to draw any conclusions. I went on the internet. First of all, I needed DNA analysis kits. Testing children would be, child's play. I often put them to bed before Caroline arrived, so this could be done easily. I also ordered surveillance equipment, a couple of small voice recorders that I could hide in her car and bag, and a few tiny cameras that I could hide around the house. I doubted she was doing it there, considering she was rarely in the house when I wasn't there, or at least I didn't think so. I needed access to her phone. I knew about a cloning tool through which I could get a copy of her phone, get all her messages and emails, and even listen to her calls. To do this, I needed to buy another phone. It took several days for everything to be delivered. During this time, I watched her carefully. Caroline didn't do anything unusual. Our sex life was pretty standard, once or twice a week, usually on the weekends when we both stayed up late in bed. I never smelled anything suspicious on her, and she never jumped into the shower as soon as she got home. Nothing changed. So either she didn't have an affair, or she was being extremely discreet, and either she had an affair for so long that it became second nature. The packages arrived on Friday morning. I asked them to be sent to my office so that there would be no questions. I had DNA test kits, voice recorders, several cameras, a cell phone, and a cloning kit. I was ready to go. That day, I left the office early. When I returned home, the au pair was just feeding the children dinner before putting them to bed. I left her to deal with this matter, and I went and hid the cameras. One in the bathroom, one in the living room, and the third in the bedroom, with a good view of the bed. I heard the kids splashing in the bathroom and went to help them get ready for bed. Taking Sonia, I left the au pair with James. Having made a swab from Sonia's cheek, I put it in my pocket. Then I laid her down and read to her until she dozed off. When I checked on James, he was still awake and the au pair was still reading to him. I offered to replace her and let her go home, and she gratefully agreed. It didn't take long for him to take the swab, and in less than 20 minutes, he too was fast asleep. I packaged the swabs along with the swab taken from my cheek and put them in the mailbox. The postman will pick them up in the morning. The service promised results would be available online within 48 business hours. So, that means Wednesday. Caroline arrived home right on time, and we went about our normal business. She told me about her day, and I told her about mine, neither of us listening to the other. We had dinner, and then she went to the shower. Taking this opportunity, I installed voice recorders in her car and bag and cloned her mobile phone. I checked the clone to see if there were any incriminating messages or emails, but there were none. Either she was very careful or she didn't cheat. I couldn't decide. The weekend went by as usual. We had sex both mornings before the kids woke up. It became almost a ritual, almost even a routine. On weekends, she had no calls or messages, and since we spent all our time together, I had no way to check if she was taking the pills, although I checked the strip and the corresponding days disappeared. Since it was just her and me in the house over the weekend, and I didn't take the pills, I fairly concluded that she did. On Monday, I told her that I would be working from home. She went to the office, and I took the opportunity to take out the flash drives from all the cameras and check them. The bathroom camera confirmed that she had indeed taken the pills, but the real surprise was on the bedroom camera. On Saturday night, while I was preparing dinner, she took a shower. In the bedroom, I saw her using her phone to text someone. There was nothing on the phone I cloned, so she must have a second phone. It definitely wasn't in her bag, so where was it? I watched what she did with him when she finished writing the message. She walked over to the ventilation duct and, releasing the latch, opened it, hiding the phone inside. I immediately went and checked the air duct and found that the phony was not there. She must hide it there when she is at home, but she takes it with her when she leaves. I needed access to this phone. This was the first concrete evidence that she was up to something, although I still didn't know what it was. There were signs that she was cheating, but it wasn't certain. I watched the footage of her getting dressed that morning and saw her take the phone from the vent unit and put it in her bag before leaving for the day. I needed this phone. In the evening, when she returned home, I watched her carefully. She casually dropped her bag in the hallway and continued her usual evening routine. After dinner, she took a shower and I looked in her bag. There was no telephone there. She must have taken it with her and hidden it in the ventilation unit when she went upstairs. She didn't know or didn't care that on the other side of the vent was Sonia's room. Quietly, listening, I crept into my daughter's bedroom and opened the window on her side. There was a phone there. I grabbed it, took it to my office, and cloned it onto my new phone in a couple of minutes. I returned it and was almost closing the window when I heard my wife getting out of the shower. I approached and sat down by Sonia's bed and began stroking her hair when my wife entered. "Something happened?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "I like to come and sit with one or the other of them from time to time," I whispered, "just to remind myself how lucky I am to have two such wonderful children." She smiled. "You are a soft old man," she said. "Come on, let's go before you wake her up." I was able to look at the clone of the phone only the next day. That's when my world collapsed. The sound of my secretary's intercom did not penetrate as I sat in my office chair and stared at the cloned messages, tears streaming down my face. Eventually, she apparently got tired of trying and knocked briefly before entering my office. She poked her head through the door and saw me. Michelle, my secretary, was an emotionless woman who dressed much older than her years. I would give her between 30 and 40 years old. She was slim, with red hair and green eyes. She always dressed conservatively, in clothes that would be appropriate on someone much older. Our relationship has always been 100% professional. I never even raised an eyebrow in her direction, although I saw the result when someone did it. It wasn't pretty. I had to talk to one of my business partners who was known as the office ladies' man. He flirted with her because he couldn't bear the thought of a woman who wouldn't fall for his charms. She told me in no uncertain terms that if he didn't quit, she would quit and sue the company not only for constructive dismissal, but also for sexual harassment. She told me that the only reason she hasn't done this yet is because I always treated her with respect and never did anything I shouldn't have done. My business partner was furious and wanted to fire her immediately. He gave us an ultimatum: either she will leave or he will. So I became the owner of 60% of the company's shares instead of the 40% with which I started. I had one less partner. Michelle immediately left when she saw me, apparently to deal with whatever she was trying to call me about. I heard voices in my outer office, and then everything went silent. Michelle returned to my office, closed and locked the door. Then she came over and, moving a chair from the other side of my table, sat down a meter away from me and facing me. She pulled out some napkins from where women always seem to have a supply and handed them to me. I took them blindly and started wiping my eyes. "Tell me," was all she said. I showed her the phone. There were text messages from Caroline and back. The other party was not named, no names were used, but they talked about secret meetings and sex that seemed to go on forever. Whoever it was, he knew her well. Talked about things that only I should know about the small mole on the inside of her thigh, about the cute sounds she made during sex. There were other details that only a lover could know, and not just a casual lover, long-term lover. I was never mentioned in any of the texts. It was as if I did not exist. There was no, "Did he get out of the way?" or "He said or did this or that." I simply wasn't there. There wasn't even an extraneous thought. "Do you know who?" she asked, still being businesslike. I shook my head. "How do you know?" she asked. I told her about finding a small silver bookmark on the bathroom floor, then about the pills. The story just flowed like a river. The whole time I was talking, she just sat and looked at me. After a while, I realized that she was holding my hand. This was the first time, I thought, that we had actually touched each other. "You need more information," she said. "The children's DNA will be obtained on Wednesday. Can you hold out until then?" "I don't know," I said. She nodded. "Our producers in Portland need to see you urgently," she said. "I booked you a ticket for the next flight. You'll be back on Thursday." "I can't think about it now." "That's what you tell Caroline," she said. She took my phone, typed a text message, and sent it to Caroline. "Something happened in Portland. We need to go and figure it out. I'll be back on Thursday. Love you." The answer came almost instantly. "Okay, let me know you got there. I'll see you when you get back." She looked at the phone for a second, her lips curling. Then she gave me my phone back and took out hers. "Lorraine," she said. "Michelle." "Yes, thank you. When are you free this afternoon?" "Great. See you then." "Go get yourself in order," she told me in a businesslike manner. The tone of voice and the fact that I was almost conditioned by her to do what she told me in the office meant that I did just that. It was actually nice not having to think. Postponing decisions and plans for someone else. When I came out of the bathroom, she was holding my jacket. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You have an appointment with an old friend of mine," she said. I just went. Lorraine turned out to be Michelle's best friend and also a divorce lawyer. She was apparently working on Michelle's divorce when she discovered her husband was cheating on her with one of his employees. Michelle explained the situation to Lorraine, and I watched in almost a state of stupor. This didn't happen to me. Lorraine has obviously seen this many times in her career. Once she had all the facts we had, she turned her attention to me. "Gary," she said. It wasn't me. She was talking to someone else. I felt pain in my cheek. Michelle slapped me. I woke up from surprise. I saw shock and amusement in Lorraine's eyes, but they quickly disappeared when she looked at me. "Gary?" she asked. I nodded. "Do you have any ideas what you want to do with this?" At these words, my engineer brain woke up. Plans were what he was good for. "Kill them both," I said. I expected at least a shocked exclamation from Michelle, but surprisingly she even grinned. "Okay," said Lorraine. "I understand it, but unfortunately, this is not an option. You see, this is against the law. However, we have several legal options. Let's look at them." "Before I start," she said, "I'm just laying out your options. I am not advocating any of them. This may happen later. The first option is to do nothing. She doesn't know that you know, but as far as I'm concerned, you've had a pretty happy life and that shouldn't change. Keep up the good work, playing the ignorant game. Secondly, an amicable divorce. File a statement of irreconcilable differences. Divide your company, home, finances. She makes less than you, so you will probably have to pay child support for her for several years, at least for the children until they graduate from high school. Thirdly, act nuclear, sue for adultery. If the children are not yours, sue for a fake birth certificate. Sue whoever the other party is for alienation of affection. If he is the father, sue him to get back all the money you spent on the kids. If he is a co-worker, sue him for not following the fraternization policy. Nowadays, almost every company has such a policy. If the other party is married, provide their partner with all the information about the affair. If she knows, then we can have a case against her. If not, then perhaps I can represent her interests in the divorce. Make it public. Tell everyone, friends, relatives, colleagues. If she is a member of any societies or church groups, tell them too. Humiliate her with all your might. We need to protect your assets, sell your share of the company into an offshore trust, mortgage the house, take whatever you can, take the cash along with the money you get from the company, cash out your 401k, and throw a party in Vegas. My thoughts raced through my head like a whirlwind. I instantly understood what she was saying. Option 1 was not an option. I was no one's willing cuckold. I've been a weak-willed, unconscious cuckold for too long. Option 2, not a chance. I spent too much time building the business and giving us the lifestyle we had. She can forget about taking half of everything I have and then continue to let me support her while she has fun with someone else. Option 3, I said. Nuclear. Lorraine smiled. Fine. Then I'll start filling out the paperwork. I would suggest starting covert surveillance of your wife and trying to find out who, when, and where. We really need more evidence. Can I keep this phone? You see that it is not doing you any good. I nodded and handed her the phone. Michelle and I left Lorraine's office, and she took me to a small family hotel. She booked a room for me. Go take a shower and order something for your room, she said. She took full responsibility. I'll be back later with some things for you. I acted mechanically. My whole world was falling apart, and I was sitting in a hotel room ordering room service as if I was on a walk. This was the only way I could cope with the stress of what was happening. 9 years on the toilet. What really hurt was that I was completely oblivious to all of this. How did I not notice what she was doing? Who was it? The same boss to whom she returned after each child. She told me that she liked her job and her independence. But was that the real reason, or she just couldn't stand being away from her lover for so long? I looked speculatively at the minibar and was about to give in when Michelle entered the room. "Don't even think about it," she said. "I need you to think and not drown your sorrows. You need to plan, and you can't do that if you look at the world through the bottom of a bottle." "To plan?" I asked gloomily. "I tried. I had a plan, and it was a good plan. I had a loving wife and 2 gorgeous children, and now look where I am. I have a cheater as my wife, and I don't even know if these 2 children are mine. I'm the biggest cuckold in the world. My whole life is falling apart. And you want me to plan it all?" She looked at me for a few moments. I waited for her to say something, maybe sympathize with me, maybe even hug me. Then she looked at her watch. "Okay," she said, all businesslike. "The pity party is over. How many times when we were starting a company did you run into obstacles and your plans fell through? What does this have to do with—" "How many?" she insisted. "I don't know," I said. "A whole bunch. There was a time when the patent office lost a patent application for an inversion filament, and we won the deal against Headingley. There was a time when the bank tried to foreclose on us early because they were under pressure. There was a time—" "Okay," she said. "At what point, in all those times, did you sit down, put your head in your hands, and give up? That was different." "Why?" she asked. "What was different in those days?" "Then I had something to fight for," I said. "I had a family that depended on me. I had—" "Now you have a family," she said, "which also depends on you. And it is much larger than the family you have at home. 141 people and their families are depending on you to handle this. None of your partners are capable of keeping the company afloat. You are all engineers, but of the 3 of you, you are the only businessman. If you lose, the company loses. Do you think this bitch cares about the families that depend on your company? If she gets half, she'll sell it to the highest bidder and you'll lose control of the business. You know who's going to buy it, and Headings will own everything you've worked on. Do you want this?" I stared at her. She was right. I've worked too long and too hard to let it all go to whoever gives this bitch more money. I needed to get everything in order to secure my future and the future of my family. If the kids were mine, I'd make sure they were taken care of. But as for Caroline, well, she made her own bed. I can grieve this relationship when I'm sure everything else is fine. My confusion cleared and, driven by anger and determination, I sat down with Michelle and began to make plans. I was going to secure the future of the company and take care of the only family I had left. It was the moment I made this decision that everything fell into place. The pain went away, the indecision disappeared. I had no doubts. Michelle saw the change in my expression and nodded in satisfaction. "That's the kind of Gary I need right now," she said. "Someone who knows how to plan for the future." We spent the rest of the evening making plans on how to secure the future of the company. At first, I was in favor of selling my shares in the company to partners, but Michelle rejected this idea. She felt that I could not trust them to run the company or leave it in my hands once they became the majority shareholders. They will destroy it to the ground. I need to maintain control. In the end, we decided that we could create an offshore trust to which I would sell the company at market price. I would then remain with the same trust as the CEO on minimum salary. I would earn virtually nothing. Because the trust was offshore, the courts would have no jurisdiction over its documents, so the owners of the trust would not be known. Now I was a millionaire, at least on paper, or would be when all this was done. I needed to get rid of all this capital. I also needed to cash out my 401k and free up all the equity on the house. Although we were together when we bought the house, it was only in my name as Caroline was not working at the time of purchase. She was carrying James, and the mortgage advisor told us it would be easier to put the loan in my name as she was not earning at that time. I made a list of what I needed to do and wrote to my lawyer, who was handling the company's legal affairs, to set up a meeting the next day. After Michelle left, I took a shower and went to bed, not expecting to sleep for long. I passed out almost as soon as my head hit the pillow and slept, until the alarm on my phone woke me up the next day. On my phone, there was a message from Caroline. "You didn't inform me of your arrival. Is everything okay?" "Sorry. I planned it until late. Then I fell asleep. Everything is coming together now. I should be back on Thursday." "Okay. See you. Love you." XX. I did not respond to this message. I just couldn't bring myself to type those words. Michelle knocked on my door a little after 8. I took another shower and was just thinking about going to breakfast. "Breakfast," she said, indicating that I should follow her. We went to a diner down the street and sat in a booth, eating bacon and pancakes with maple syrup. Part of me couldn't understand why I was acting this way, as if my world didn't collapse and my heart didn't burst out. My reasoning was that at some point, when the dust had settled, it would all come down on me. However, I did not want this, but for now I needed to work. "Brian Spencer," Michelle said, calling the name of my lawyer, called and said he had time at 10 to meet with us. "We can go to your bank first and cash out your 401k and also release equity from your house before we go there." "I understand that consolidating my money is worth it," I said, "but there is still a record that I had it all. Can't the court just order me to pay her half?" "Only if you still have them," Michelle grinned. "That's where Vegas comes in. Once you have all this capital, you go and spend a week in Vegas and blow a lot of money, and all this before you file for divorce. That way, when you are judged in court, you will be poor. In debt, actually. The bank will foreclose on your house, and your salary will barely be enough to live on. This is provided that the children are not yours. If they're yours, you'll simply put your entire 401k in trust for them, for their college fund. Caroline won't be able to touch him. Technically, she will earn more than you. She can easily afford the house on her own, and may even end up paying you alimony. When will you get the DNA results?" "The company said the results should appear on the internet sometime today," I said, picking up the phone. I checked the email the company sent me, and there was a link that I clicked on. It started to load, but then I put the phone down. I wasn't sure I was ready to see the results yet. "Can?" Michelle asked, and I pushed the phone towards her. She took it and looked at the screen, scrolling up a few times. I watched her face, looking for clues, trying to guess from her expression what she might say. She looked up from the phone. "The results are not ready yet," she said. "According to the tracking data, they should be received within the next 12 hours. I let out a breath I didn't even know I had. "Let's go," she said, getting up. "The bank should already be open." Freeing up equity in the house and cashing out my 401k took surprisingly little time. I closed all of our savings accounts, including our children's college funds, and transferred the money to an account I opened in my name. The only account I left alone was the joint account we use daily. In any case, there was less than $10,000 in this account. My lawyer stuck a huge paddle into our plans, but if it can be done in a good way, he did it. "You are forgetting one thing," he said when we outlined our plan to him. "You have a marriage contract." "I have?" I was surprised. I had no idea. "That was a condition of the partnership agreement when you started working," he reminded me. All partners were required to enter into a prenuptial agreement that would protect the company in the event of a breakup. It only applies to the company, but it does not have any rights over the assets of the company. For divorce purposes, you are an employee of the company, and therefore, at best, it can claim your salary and 401k. That's all. "What I would suggest," he said, "and I don't mean to say anything bad about your divorce lawyer's plan, is to use all the equity you have freed up from the house and 401k and invest in the company." Buy out one of your partners. I know that Robert hinted at a desire to make money. You don't have enough funds for this, but you could take out a loan from the company pension fund to make up the difference. Payments will be made from your salary, which means your income will be much less when you are assessed for assets. And since everything else will be tied to the company, it is sacrosanct. Your credit rating will take a hit when the bank forecloses on your house, and you'll lose half of everything you have left in the bank. But other than that, she won't get anything. We can make your salary less than hers, so she may even end up paying you child support. What can I live on? I asked. If my entire salary is tied to loan payments, I will still need somewhere to live and eat. Not to mention that I have 2 more children. And I paused. At least I think. Let's wait with the children, he said. Have you already decided what to do if they are not yours? Will you still be involved in their lives? I don't know, I said. It's too terrible a thought to think about. I'll have to wait until I know for sure before making such decisions. Don't forget about the other parts of your plans. Regarding the other lawyers, he reminded me. I'm willing to bet you get enough money from the lawsuit against her company to pay off the loan and get back to getting a full salary when this is all over. Not to mention demanding back the expenses from the father of the children if it turns out that they are not yours. Since this will occur after the divorce, it will not be considered part of the settlement agreement. Could you contact Robert on my behalf and see if he is interested in selling? I'm not sure I'm capable of that right now. He nodded. I'll call him and then let you know. We shook hands and left his office. I felt relieved as we left the building. Plans began to come together, which always gave me a feeling of deep satisfaction. Then I remembered why we made these plans. My relief disappeared, and I felt an emptiness in my chest. We were sitting in a diner having lunch when I dared to look at my phone again. Once again, I couldn't bring myself to do more than click on the link in the email before handing over the phone to Michelle, and again, I watched her face, waiting for the reaction that would tell me whether I had become a father or not. I'm so sorry, Gary, she said softly. This was the most unbusinesslike answer I have ever heard. She handed me the phone, and I read the results myself. Neither child was biologically mine. Although they had the same father, it just wasn't me. The double whammy of losing both my children was replaced by the rage I felt at the betrayal. Not only did she pass these 2 children off as mine, but she also convinced me to have a vasectomy, which meant I could no longer have children of my own. Gary, Michelle snapped, bringing me back to myself. Now is not the time or place. Keep calm. We will get through this, I promise. I took a few deep breaths, suppressing my anger. I really wanted to cause serious physical harm to someone. I even thought about hiring a hitman to kill the bastard who fathered the children who were supposed to be mine. Michelle pulled herself together again and led me out of the diner. Lorraine called, she said. She wants to see you. And we headed to Lorraine's office. Lorraine looked gloomy when we entered her office. I have a preliminary report from a private investigator, she said. Obviously, Caroline wasted no time. Last night, a man came to your house and stayed the night. We couldn't look inside. I have cameras installed in the house, I said. I can go swap the flash drives and we can see what happened. Okay, she said. Go ahead and do it now, and then we can make a plan. I'm guessing the information on these flash drives will be important. There will be an au pair there, I said. I can't go back. It is believed that I will be out of town on business. Lorraine checked her phone. The au pair is at the play center with Sophie and James, she said. I'll keep an eye on her and let you know if she comes out.